Hello, residents. It's good to see you all, and I'm really appreciative that you're here. I should say me. The task force is very appreciative that you're here. Tonight, we are going to connect with you. The task force and our engineer are going to tell you what we've been doing, what we're learning, what it's starting to look like, some of our feelings about it. Megan the engineer will be doing probably 90% of the presentation. Then after we've summarized, as you know, this started out with us collecting data. So, and we've been doing that quite a bit with this survey and with the walkarounds and emails. This is for you, it's a night to really come to understand what we're doing and what we're trying to do and what our hopes are for completing this task without talking about ultimate recommendations, because we're not there yet. And it's a great opportunity for us, particularly Megan, to hear from you and specific questions and concerns that you have. So we will all benefit from this, I hope. There's a lot to cover tonight. We only have about 60 to 90 minutes if Megan has issues with childcare and families. So we're going to try a new format a little bit tonight, and it may work, it may not work, we'll see. But the hope is that we'll just be more time efficient. And so what we'd like you to do is, the plan is that Megan will make her presentation in 3 chunks. Hello?
Keep going.
And that at the end of each chunk, there'll be our 1-minute timeout. We'd like you to write your questions in the chat box if you are facile with that. And then at the end and hold all your questions, put all your questions there or hold them till the end. When Megan is finished, Yasmina will sort of curate the questions. And I don't mean edit them, but she'll combine similar questions, and she may prioritize them based upon the level of interest, but all questions will be dealt with. It's just referring as which questions will go first and which will come later. At the end of that, if there's still time left, we'll open the floor for the standard way of doing things, which is people asking questions and Megan responding to them, unless it's something a task force member should respond to. Also, if there are questions that we don't get to tonight, or if there are questions you have walking home to your homes, you're in your homes. If there are questions you have tonight or tomorrow, send them to the Water Task Force email, and we will forward them to Megan. You'll get answers, and we'll be publishing a lot of that to the extent that it helps other members understand what things are being considered and thought about and are of concern. So, our email is water@martinsadditions.org, and we'll be monitoring it. We'll respond when we see an email letting you know we have it, and then we forward it on, and then we'll be providing the answer back to you. So, with all that, I'd like to Megan to start, unless the task force has anything else to add. Okay, not hearing any additional suggestions from the task force. Megan, could you please proceed?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Thank you all for joining us for the first public meeting to go over the stormwater investigations for the Village of Martin's Additions. I'm going to start with a brief overview of Balian Consultants and Designers, which is the firm I work for. We are not a general civil engineering firm with a small water resources environmental component. We are an environmental engineering firm. So we specialize in projects at the land-water interface. Our 3 major groups are stormwater management and sustainable site development, stream and ecological restoration, and marine dredging and shoreline restoration. So coming up with remediation for stormwater management is one of our core areas of expertise. I am Megan Barnett. I am a senior project manager. I have 18 years of experience, 12 have been with Balian. I've probably done at least 10 of these types of assessments in the last couple of years. Working with me behind the scenes is Christopher Stepp. He's the stormwater management practice leader. He's also been heavily involved in the town of Somerset's stormwater work. We also have Josh Gozman, who is a stormwater engineer. Anna Johnson is more of a coastal engineer, but she's also our in-house climate change professional. So she makes sure we're up to date with all the latest climate change projection guidelines. And with me tonight, and who's been working with me a lot on this project, is Grace Mazur, who's a water resource engineer. So tonight we're going to go over an introduction to kind of how we came to where we are today. We're going to review the existing information, go over the field investigations, which involved a drainage assessment and critical elevation survey. We're going to review the development of existing conditions, and then the modeling to determine flood-prone areas for various rainfall amounts. And then we'll end the presentation with the next steps that are going to be performed up until the next community meeting. And then we'll stop a couple times throughout, as Mark said, and end with some additional times for questions and feedback on your stormwater issues. So the village experiences heavier rainfall and more frequent flooding. The two primary contributing factors are, first, an increase in impervious area from new lot and development lot construction, and also rainfall is becoming higher and more intense due to climate change. The VMA has appointed a stormwater and groundwater task force to respond to resident concerns regarding problems arising from increasing stormwater and groundwater. As Mark said, the task force has been busy collecting relevant documents from the village and surrounding communities, as well as conducting some initial assessments. In order for the village to develop a comprehensive plan to address the stormwater issues, the task force applied for and obtained a grant from the Department of Natural Resources to solicit engineering firms to perform an investigation and analysis, identify stormwater problems, assess remediation options for priority areas, prioritize these recommendations, and then work with the task force to produce and deliver a report. So Baleen responded to that request for proposal, and we were contracted by the village on the end of January of 2025. We are in the process of reviewing approximately 25 files that will help us facilitate stormwater improvements within the village. These files are a combination of files provided by the task force and also files we have obtained from various county and state jurisdictions. To help give us an existing conditions base map, we utilize light detection and ranging, which is abbreviated LIDAR data that's flown from Montgomery County. That gives us the topographic elevations. We also obtained multiple county GIS data, which gives us roads, buildings, public storm drains, stream channels. We obtained water and sewer infrastructure from WSSC, and environmental data like soil, stream channels, and floodplains are obtained from a resource called abbreviated MERLIN, which is Maryland Environmental Resources and Land Information Network. To ensure that the mitigation solutions we come up with are consistent with state and local regulations, as well as improvements that have worked with neighboring communities, we're reviewing multiple state and local ordinances, as well as some community documents. Yeah. So these include the Montgomery County Drainage Design Manual, the Code of Montgomery Regulations Concord, their Chapter 19 for Stormwater Management Regulations, and also the Maryland Department of Environment Stormwater Management Design Manual. A few of the neighboring community documents include the Town of Somerset Stormwater Study and Stormwater Ordinance Recommendations, which Baleen has been involved with, Chevy Chase's Village Stormwater Committee Report, and Chevy Chase Section 3 Stormwater Priorities, as well as the Town of Chevy Chase Rainscapes Project. We also reviewed a 2024 community survey that the village solicited, and over 90 residents responded regarding their stormwater and flooding concerns. So we did note all of those areas on our existing conditions base maps. We also reviewed the Taylor Street drainage study and previously approved stormwater management plans by the county for new construction within the village. Finally, we obtained site-specific rainfall data for the village. The first component is from NOAA. They have a tool that provides what we call IDF, which is intensity, duration, frequency, rainfall data for this specific project area. And then to account for heavier and more intense rainfall due to climate change, there's a tool that Marissa developed. Scientists and educators developed a tool where they take that base NOAA, which is that red line down here, And then based on the frequency of the storm event and the depth of rainfall, it tells us a multiply factor that we can apply. So that way we can stimulate higher rainfall into our project. And that way mitigation solutions will be more resilient as rainfall continues to become more intense. Concurrent with the review of all that existing information, we performed field investigations. We started with the drainage assessment, so that way we can identify locations experiencing flooding and erosion, and also areas and structures for a critical elevation survey. We first came out on March 14th, and we walked the public areas of the village with the task force. And then on April 16th, we visited all the residential lots that completed that 2024 survey and noted stormwater concerns. And we also visited lots that we identified that we wanted to take a look at because they're located within main stormwater overland flow paths. The top two pictures are just representatives of inlet on private property, as well as a drainage ditch going through rear yards. We then perform what we call a critical elevation survey, where we're just getting specific elevation data of the storm drain structures. So we get the top and invert elevations that are necessary for the model we want to develop. And this bottom picture is just a picture of our survey crew getting some pipe data. The existing topography for the project area is based on that LiDAR data I mentioned on the review slide, and we utilize that for the development of base maps and the model. This first image is the topography for the ultimate drainage area. So this whole outline is the overall drainage area to Rock Creek, where the storm drains within the village discharge. The village limits are kind of right here along Brookline Road, so it does account for the additional area from neighboring communities. And the red indicates higher elevations, where the green is the lower elevations and the overland stormwater flow path. So ultimately, all runoff comes into these kind of green areas. This is consistent with the historical map from USDA from the 1940s, where you can see the green areas kind of line up with these existing stream channels that were piped when the rest of the village was developed. The drainage system is based on the county GIS and as-built data and supplemented with our assessment and critical elevation survey. Our drainage assessment concluded that the storm drain infrastructure receives a large developed contributing drainage area, and the system is aging with undersized pipes. There are also multiple streets without any drainage infrastructure. As I noted on the last slide, the village does receive a lot of runoff from the surrounding communities. So this, you can actually see the village outline is in white compared to that overall red drainage area for the stormwater runoff. And then the orange lines were the publicly available storm drain infrastructure. And as you see, when it rains today, the storms overwhelm the drainage system, which means water surcharges or pops out of the inlets. And then it follows the overland flow paths, which were the green areas on that topography map. And you'll see frequent flooding in streets and yards when it rains. Here are some representative photos from our drainage assessment. This is Shepherd Street, which is one of the streets without any storm drain infrastructure. Here are a couple of photos showing aging infrastructure. The top photo also shows the importance of maintenance of inlets. These inlets can easily get clogged with leaves and yard debris and just sediment. And when they're blocked, that impedes the rainfall can't drain. And then it just increases the flooding extents. Here's a picture that shows some backyard erosion. And then here is a picture of a new lot construction with pretty much maximum allowable lot coverage. And then this was one of the stopping points if people want to type some questions.
Megan, we don't have any chat questions yet.
Okay, so should I just keep going?
Feel free to keep going.
Okay. So then we started developing our model. This model is used to determine flooding extents for various scenarios and will ultimately be used to evaluate the effectiveness of whatever solutions we come up with. The first component in modeling is hydrology. Hydraulic analysis involves figuring out the volume or the amount of runoff that is entering into this drainage area and into all of these pipes. There's a variety of factors that determine this. First, we look at the drainage area, so this overall red outline. For this area, it's approximately 211 acres, so that's a very large area. Then we need to determine the characteristics within this drainage area. So we look at things like land use and soil type, which all influences the amount of water running through this area. Land use is determining the amount that's impervious, woods, lawn, etc. Impervious area is anything that water can't pass through, so roads, buildings, sidewalks, patios. And the higher impervious area you have, it increases the amount of stormwater flowing through the area. This drainage area is approximately 32% impervious, which I know you think, oh, 32, it's a third. That's actually pretty high for a drainage area. We don't see much higher than in the 30s when we're working with developed areas and drainage areas. And then soil types, they range from hydraulic soil group A, which is low runoff because it has higher infiltration. So those are like very sandy soils, to what we call HSGD, which is more like clay and fine soils. So they have lower infiltration and produce higher runoff. The village is primarily B soils. So it does allow for some infiltration of runoff. So that helps the volume of stormwater a little bit. Then we gather the rainfall data for the watershed, which I discussed on the previous slide with the NOAA data and the climate change projections. So then once we have the drainage area, this land use information, and the rainfall data, we enter it into a program. We use Technical Release 55, which is a computer program developed by the USDA Natural Resource Conservation District, and it simulates runoff from storm events, which then equals the amount of flow into the watershed. So this gives us our flow and the volume of water. Then if hydrology is how much water reaches the community and its drainage system, hydraulics is how the water moves through that system. So this, we use a 2D software to model the flood extents and depths of stormwater, which I'll get into on the following slides. This image is just an overall, once again, the overall drainage area. And then the red triangle is the ultimate outfall point. And then the yellow are pipes and the blue are structures. So we use a program called PC Swim. It's a 2D model that was developed by the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA. It has urban flood modeling with dual drainage analysis capabilities. That means it can account for overland flow as well as pipe flow within the system. So 1D models are limited where it's like we can either model the pipe or the overland, but it doesn't do the combine, where this does the combine. So if the storm drain system is at capacity and the water can't flow into it, it then projects it overland as well. We modeled the 1, 10, and 100-year storm events. So we use the 1 year because it's a more typical storm event, more common. So it gives us an idea of how these common rainfall events flow through the village. The 10-year is the current design storm event required by the county. So if you were developing a new area, you would have to make sure your infrastructure size for the 10-year storm event. So this will give us an idea of if the village system meets current requirements or if it's undersized. Then the 100-year is a less frequent, very large storm event. So we can see how the rainfall flows for a more extreme event or one of those very flashy thunderstorms, which is what we'd see more often. Sometimes people think the 100-year storm event happens like once every 100 years, but a few inches of runoff in a 2-hour time period pretty much equates to that 100-year storm event. So a very flashy thunderstorm simulates that event. And every actual storm event is different, so it's impossible to predict every scenario, but modeling these 3 events gives us a high-level overview of the capacity of the system and the location for the most problematic areas. This image shows the capacity of the system for the 10-year event. Red indicates that it is undersized, and so water is surcharging and popping out and then going overland versus going through the pipes. So some of the southern area within the village and the Taylor Street area has some undersized systems in the village. This next image is the 1-year results. So you can see the flooding stays more localized to the lower areas and the drainage flow paths, which is kind of, I brought in the topo map again. So you can see the flooding stays kind of close to the system and these lower lying green areas. And then when we look at the 10-year results, you can see it starts progressing more upland and becoming more deeper, where we're getting more darker blue and red. So that the darker blue and red means the flooding depth is higher. And then you can see compared to the 1 year, how we're just getting just more blue in general, kind of moving from these lower land areas and getting more into the yards of the lots. And then finally, the 100-year event, you can see that we're getting flooding in just about every lot in the village, and it's getting much more extensive and deeper in these lower lying areas. And this was going to be another stopping point for questions and answers.
Megan, we have a question from Peter Can, who is asking if you could identify the streets that have no storm drainage facilities.
Yes. So let me get, I don't have all the streets memorized. Google.
Megan, just show all you have to do is show the drains, and everything else doesn't have them.
Yeah, so you can see, I mean, down here, you have storm drainage system. When you get up to Cummings and Shepherd, there's nothing. I forget the street north of Shepherd, and then we get up to Taylor, and that has a more extensive storm drain system in it. And then at the end of Dellfield, we have some as well. So the streets at the southern end of the village, they don't have a lot within the roadways, but they have them at the street ends to pick up the runoff. And then you can see when you get to Cummings and Shepherd and the street north of Shepherd, there's not even road end. So this whole area all drains to this point right here.
And that's the playing field.
Correct. Does that answer the question?
I think it does. We haven't had a follow-up, but Peter, feel free to share any follow-up. We have another question from Marty, who is asking if it would be possible to see larger versions of the map images.
Sure. I mean, I don't have them available, but we can create PDFs and send them, and we can send them to the task force, and you guys can share them or post them.
Yeah.
And they'll ultimately be like full exhibits in the report.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions for the moment, so maybe we'll just hold questions for now so you can continue with the presentation.
Okay. So stormwater causes flooding through the village. You guys live here, you knew that. So what happens now? So the next steps are probably what you guys care about most. We've compared the model to the 2024 survey results and the previous assessments, and it's pretty consistent with those efforts. So if we hear of any new flood prone areas tonight, we'll compare to the model and calibrate as necessary. We're then going to work with the task force to identify the top 10 problematic areas. For those 10 areas, we'll start looking at developing potential remediation solutions. These could be things like upgrading the existing storm drain system, installing new infrastructure, some outfall channel restorations. We're limited. A lot of times we try and look for areas where we can put in like a stormwater management best management practice, but the village is pretty much built out, so there probably won't be many opportunities for that, but that's still something we consider. And then finally, we'll try and develop just general remediation options for homeowners to consider. So depending on kind of what the general backyard issues are, we'll just say these are some things that homeowners can consider to help with their stormwater runoff. We'll develop a cost estimate, identify any necessary easements, environmental impacts, grant funding options will be considered for each solution. And then we'll prioritize the top 10 areas as far as what should be considered like immediate, short-term, and long-term for implementation. We're also going to make some recommendations to the village ordinances and potential education and outreach initiatives that could help mitigate stormwater issues. As I stated, my colleague Christopher Stepp has worked with the town of Somerset and updates to their stormwater ordinance. So he'll be very involved working with myself and the task force to help make recommendations for the village to alleviate stormwater issues from an ordinance standpoint. And then all of this work that was presented tonight and what we'll complete in this next step slide will be documented and put into a comprehensive report. We'll submit that to the village and the task force for review and comment. And then we'll come back and present that draft report at a second community meeting to gather your feedback. We're anticipating that meeting to be around September 2025, but the timeframe could change just depending on how long reviews take. So the task force will keep you updated on the schedule in their monthly newsletter. And with that, we can see if there's any more questions and answers.
Thank you, Megan. If you could remove the chart so I can see if people are raising their hands with a little yellow hand.
The chart.
Your chart covers all the people. I can't see anybody.
I think you mean stop sharing your screen.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I was speaking in geezer speak.
And just to there are no questions in the chat, so we can open the floor for.
All right, so let's open it up for live questions.
And I might want to share my screen, and if people want to see a specific slide again.
Right, I still can't see any people here. So, Yasmina, can you see the people who would be raising their hands?
I can. So this is an invitation. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand.
I see some hands raising.
Great.
Okay.
Would you mind calling on them, because I can't see it?
I think I saw Marty raise her hand first, followed by Susan Can. So Marty, if you would like to go first.
I will defer to Susan because I suspect her yard flooded from the day's rain.
Yeah.
And so pick on me, call me back after you talk to Susan Kahn. Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure I heard correctly. Did you say that you all will identify the top 10 places where you think there are concerns in the village, or have you already identified those?
We have not identified them yet. We just completed the model. We still got to kind of fine tune it. And then we can look and see which areas we think are the most problematic. And we'll work with the task force on that because, like I said, the model's not perfect. But you guys live and see everything, so we take into account just kind of day-to-day input as well as the model results when we identify these areas.
And
Okay,
if I may add, Susan, when we produce the draft report, there'll be a chance to amend things, and if people feel we've missed something and they have a good point, then it'll be included. We'll just change the report. I mean, it's a collaborative effort. Thank you. Yasmina, you want to call on somebody else?
You're muted, Yasmina.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Marty, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you so much. And I have two things to say. Number one is thank you to the Bayland folks. This was really informative. And big thank you to the task force, because you guys are really this is incredibly important and helpful. So kudos all around. Good first step. And Mark, I want to say I really like the open, inclusive process that you're outlining here with community input at several different points. And putting the material up on the website so people can look at it in more detail as you go along. I mean, that's just great. The transparency here, I think, is just an important part of the process. My question is about remediation for those of us who are at the top of the hills, where our soil has eroded and is mostly clay, so we get a lot of drainage off our lots. And, do you think things like rain gardens on the downhill side of our lots actually make any difference?
So rain gardens help for those smaller storm events. So I mean, like I said, I still have to look at things in more detail, but I'm envisioning kind of a hybrid of like a cobble or rock swale, because that'll help prevent erosion, and then some native plants within that to help soak up rainfall as well.
And my final question is, in the meantime, will the village council consider prizes for the canoe races along Taylor Street? That's a joke. Thank you all.
Nice job, Joe. I'd like to tell everybody that we're going to publish all this stuff. It'll be in our website folder, or however Michael tells us it should be published. So you'll be able to look at these charts. This meeting has been recorded. You'll be able to watch it again. The meeting, Michael has, I think, is going to be producing a transcript. You'll be able to read that. And Michael also has an AI tool, which I'm not sure how we'll be using it, but I suppose it can be used to search through the transcript for things that are of interest to individual residents. So everything's going to be transparent that is of any use.
FYI, Mark and Michael, I did make some last minute changes to the presentation this afternoon, so I'll send you an updated link so you can post the latest version.
Perfect. Okay, so the next,
Mark,
I was just going to ask, is anybody
I
else
have a
wants to
quick
talk?
question.
Please.
Megan, we have a modest amount of hills, we have clay soil, we have aging infrastructure. Is there anything that you saw that was different, unusual, unexpected, surprise, anything that struck you?
No, I mean, like I said, every community is a little different, but I mean, in these communities that are older, it's always the aging infrastructure, the lack of infrastructure, the lack of room to put in stormwater management, best management practices. So it just kind of gets to what's the best way we can alleviate, by adding new systems, upgrading the existing systems, and then just letting homeowners know things just making you guys aware of things you do on your yard that could have adverse impacts on your neighbors, and things you could implement on your yard to help protect it, give it stable conveyance, and prevent erosion of your personal yard.
Great. And then the recommendation we're thinking about will probably have layers to it. We're still thinking it through, but we're hoping that we can present to the council a quick and dirty set of solutions, maybe all in a stormwater code that can be enacted with relative speed, so we can get ahead of the curve on this, because people are still knocking down houses and replacing them. And I've got 2 houses for sale on Shepherd Street now. They'll both get knocked down, and we want to get ahead of that and then integrate that into the general code process. And also I think one of the biggest things is going to, besides that and the dealing with the infrastructure, the biggest thing is going to be all of us coming together and working to help each other out with our properties. It'll bring the community together. It'll be great.
Yeah, let me share my screen again. Just so you can kind of see. I feel like this kind of shows it best, where, like I said, all these streets in the middle here that don't have infrastructure, all of Cummings goes through these few lots on Shepherd Street, and then comes down Shepherd Street and ultimately goes to that park area outfall. So it's just knowing that the runoff crosses so many properties, making sure residents are aware of, things not to do to have adverse impacts, and things they can do to help their own property.
Megan.
And I think the last thing I'd like to share is that I think one of the greatest frequency of complaints when we did the walkthrough was the impact of development on the neighbors. So the code things can be very important. Anything else from anybody?
I did see in the chat someone was asking if we could identify the streets with no storm drain facilities. I'm not sure if this map kind of shows it, but
We
I
did
guess the
answer
yellow
that. It
lines
was
there.
down at the south portion. There's like street end, and then when you get to Cummings and Shepherd, and I forget the street, there's no infrastructure. So like I said, ultimately this whole area goes to this point, and then Taylor and Delafield have some infrastructure.
And then I got another question. Is it possible for us to see larger versions of these maps and images?
Yes, we can provide PDFs, and ultimately they will be in the report as well.
And I think Elizabeth has a question. Elizabeth, do you want to go ahead?
Thank you. Megan, I wanted to ask you, at the beginning of your presentation, you showed, I think, a picture that said a large part of the problem is drainage from neighborhoods outside of Martin's Additions that's crossing the street and coming in.
It's not necessarily a problem, but you do receive runoff from their areas. So that does contribute to the Taylor Street drainage system primarily.
So my question was if there's anything included to be in discussion with those jurisdictions about what they're doing, or, you know, remediation options they may be taking to lessen that flow across, you know, by gravity down to our side.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see their systems are in just as bad a shape as well. So
Yeah.
they are experiencing flooding as well.
Elizabeth, this is Mark. Part of this next chunk is going to be to talk to the local, our neighboring communities, about these issues, but also about any possible collaborative efforts between communities to do things that help each other or share cost or something. And we'll hopefully get far enough along so we can say something substantive in the report about that. That would be our hope.
Peter, do you want to go ahead? I think you have a question.
Sure. I just was looking at the map, and I'm not sure I understand it completely, but you know, I live on the south end of the village, and the streets there slope steeply downhill to the right. And I noticed that it looks like the pipe that goes through, or the stormwater management facility, whatever it is above the very bottom of the street. And so
yeah, I know.
most
I
of the
recall
water would be running past it to the very bottom.
Yeah, I recall. Yeah, you had the inlets, maybe just before your driveway, and then there was those curb openings that frequently get clogged.
Right.
For the remaining of the runoff to then come around and enter the drainage swale around. So there are, I mean, there are pretty simple fixes to help alleviate those issues.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think we have a question from Susan. And Mary, would you like to ask a question? I see you raising your hand. Susan, do you want to go ahead, and then Mary?
This is a question that you might not be able to answer, but sometimes there's water buildup or like flooding right outside the edge of the village, and I guess that's not really your purview, but I didn't know if maybe the Stormwater Task Force wants to at least think about the kind of deep flooding that happens on Brookville Road and Bradley at that intersection when it rains. But again, maybe that we can't even think about that because it's maybe outside of our area. But I just wanted to mention that that was sort of an issue because it gets kind of deep there.
I do recall that intersection where it is kind of just a natural low point and there's no infrastructure. So that's something, you know, we can identify, and then, you know, it would just have to get coordinated with the state.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we'll be looking at those things and figuring out what can be done. There's a similar problem at Cummings and Brookville, where there's a large puddling right at the edge of Brookville. So
thanks.
Sure.
Mary, please go ahead.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to ask, when you've referred to Cummings and its surrounding streets, Just south is Raymond and Bradley that both have dead ends and steep hills. I mean, are there issues that you've identified with those?
Like I said, we haven't really looked at the areas and identified exact issues. We've just ran the model. We have our field notes, and I've spoke to the cons before, so I was very familiar with what they were just bringing up. But now we need to look at the model and these areas very specifically. But thank you. We will definitely make sure we take a look at those two areas.
Thank you.
Mary, do you want to identify your address for Megan down there on the end of Raymond? I know there's a floodplain map that you were added to, so I know that's a specific concern.
Yeah, that's 3407 and 3407, 3411, 3406 are some of the addresses on Raymond.
Okay.
But Bradley has kind of, you know, sort of a parallel street with some of the same.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions. Do we have any questions from the council or from the task force?
I can ask a question. Hi, Megan. Thank you for your work, and Grace. I live on Taylor Street, as that's mentioned to be a problem area. Will you all be looking at and studying? I know you said where we are at Delfield and Taylor that we have like infrastructure for this, but it's very much aging. Is there will you be studying? We have a steep kind of incline between Turner Lane backs up to Taylor, and a lot of the lots on Taylor are way lower than lots on Turner. And I'm not blaming Turner Lane, but we get a lot of runoff from the homes in Turner Lane. A house was built behind me on Turner Lane and caused significant flooding and sort of a downstream. So will you be studying sort of that topography as well?
Yes.
And actually, speaking of, Paula asked a question in the chat, which is she was wondering if it would be possible to superimpose the topography map with the Martin's Editions map so we can see where the streets are. I think please jump in, Paula, if your question is a little different.
Not at all. It's just difficult for us it was difficult for Jeff and I to do this ourselves. It's you know, as Katie pointed out, and as Mary pointed out, the topography, you know, the more granular topography at our dead ends is appears to be a little bit more dramatic than this topographic map indicates. So I think it would be great to see sort of the finer points in our topography, because these finer points have affected our properties quite dramatically at times. So
yes,
thank you.
We do have these maps that we can share. Like I said, they're not just good for visuals for presentations, but we have these existing conditions-based maps we put together that show the more detailed contour elevations and then the individual stormwater infrastructure.
Thank you.
So we can share these, and the circles just indicate those that had concerns in that 2024 survey.
Thank you.
Anybody else? This is great.
Yeah, someone just raised their hand.
I think, yeah, Marty, would you like to go ahead? Marty, you may be muted.
Sorry. Thank you. I'm wondering about the timeline to actually improve like the size of a pipe. Because the water on Taylor Street really is deep enough you could canoe on. And the state seems to be having some funding issues in terms of like even just handling the flooding that's been happening for years on Brookville Road. And by the way, Taylor and Brookville also floods really badly with the runoff from, you know, our neighboring jurisdictions. And I'm wondering, what's the timeline? How long does it take to get a larger pipe installed, for example, or if that's the best solution? I mean, what are we talking?
It will be a lengthy process. You know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is like the planning phase. So this is to come up with a comprehensive plan. And then the village can take this, any applicable grants they can apply for to get design and implementation funding. You know, it's taking these recommendations, figuring out how to fund them, and then seeking those funding sources. And then it moves to the design, permitting, and construction phase.
Is there a line we can get in at the state level to sort of like not be number 412 when it's finally ready at the end of this process? Can we get in line now?
No, most grants, I mean, they're going to want to see the report, and then they open up every year. So you just, and they're competitive. So, you know, you just have to be patient. And you submit your grant application, your funding request, which our report will identify, you know, the funds that you should request. And then, you know, a few months after the applications are due, they typically make award announcements.
So the fastest way to actually maybe have an impact here is through our own building code, which we can amend.
If you have your own funding sources, yes.
Okay, but we could limit the impervious surface with our building code while waiting for the state to approve a grant for a larger pipe, for example. We could take care of our building code first.
Correct.
You know, Marty, we have looked tentatively at rebuilding the sewer line, the storm sewer line on Taylor Street, and have actually had an engineer take a look at that. If you wait for the state to do it, it could take years, decades before
That was my concern, Arthur. You're exactly what I'm dealing with what I'm
it's
concerned about.
expensive, and we have done it. Michael, you might say something about. I don't think we ever put a dollar figure on it, but it's high.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I read that assessment, and I agree with a lot of the findings and the recommendations, but I don't recall seeing a cost estimate in it.
No, we didn't do it. Michael, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, there's some complication here because we're talking about the state, and the state owns Brookville Road and the right of way for Brookville Road, but it's the county that actually installed and owns and is supposed to be maintaining the storm drains. So the county is another level of government, you know, and some of these projects and recommendations that come out of this might actually be stuff that we can do with our own dollars in our own jurisdiction. But Brookville Road and the storm drains that are currently there are not within our jurisdiction.
Taylor Street, we had Azar look at Taylor Street.
Yeah, the report that Megan is referring to from Clark Azar and Associates did not have a price associated with it, but I did have another engineer run some numbers on what they think that would cost to basically double the size of that storm drain under Taylor Street. And you're talking, you know, $1 million or more.
That sounds wow. The other complication is you're crossing private property, so you need to get permissions. And even with some of the recommendations we're going to come up with, it is going to involve private properties, and that sometimes that gets difficult to get everyone on board.
Yeah, and that's just for one street, and I think there was 110 acres of flow into that one drain. And you can even see on this map on the screen right now, those two storm drains kind of collide and come together before they go underneath several properties before they exit into the Shepherd Street Park. So, you know, that's a bottleneck of the drainage system already. So we know there's an issue there. There's been an issue there, and we just need to make sure for now that storm drain does not get clogged. So that's the biggest priority.
Right. You know, one of the things that may be considered are tree boxes, which capture the water for a period of time and then release it into the storm drain slowly. And I guess the places those could be placed would be in the public right-of-way strips in front of our houses. But it's just an idea. I've seen it done in a couple of shopping centers very effectively. And they're planted nice, so they look nice. But we're going to look at a bunch of ideas. And then Megan's going to tell us which ones are better and worse. And then we'll talk to you guys and we'll sort it out.
Yasmina?
Thank you, Megan. Megan, keeping in mind that, there's a whole area of the village that doesn't currently have any stormwater pipes, and then we have the aging infrastructure. In your report, will you address some kind of priority in terms of, will you assess the most urgent need for the village so that it, to help the village with its budgeting process and
Yeah.
grant applications?
Yes, so we will prioritize and do like immediate, short-term, long-term. So we'll look at the worst areas, and then the middle areas, and then the less flood-prone areas. And sometimes the worst area might not be the immediate because it has easement issues or other things. So we factor in not just the flooding, but also the cost, impacts, easements, things of that nature.
I think that will be very helpful. Thank you.
Megan, one of the things we haven't talked about is how far out we're going to look. You could make the argument that we should be looking at not just what we need to do with today or 5 years from now, but 25 years from now. Is that an appropriate thing to think about in this report?
So we are looking at the 2050 climate change projections. So we're looking at rainfall that's, anticipated to be around 25 years from now. And that's a good planning level because the life cycle of whatever you're going to install, is somewhere in that 30 to 50 range. So we do consider the life cycle of the improvement and then also the projected stormwater for the future.
Great. All right. Last call. Here, last call. Anybody else have another question they want answered tonight? And of course, they
raising
can.
her hand.
Good. And of course, anybody else can ask the question tomorrow and we'll still answer it. Go ahead, Marty.
I just want to say a big, big thank you. I've been waiting for this kind of analysis for the 40 years that I've lived here, and you guys are just terrific. Both our engineering team, this is a clear presentation, and Mark and everybody on the task force, thank you so much. I think Susan Kahn has a thank you in the chat too, and boy, I tell you, a lot of us long-term residents are really grateful that you're tackling this so thoroughly, and kudos and bravo, and keep it up. Thank you guys. Bye.
All right. On that, thank you, which is greatly appreciated. And by the way, you mentioned my name, but Nick and Elizabeth and Yasmin are carrying me through this. So they're fabulous. It's the best committee I've ever been on. We're greatly appreciative of your appreciation. We're going to continue the work and then figure out what's next. So with that, may we adjourn? Does anybody have an objection to that?
I just wanted
Please,
to add thank you everyone for participating tonight. It's really great to hear your questions. And we just had so much great input when we were doing the site visits. If you have any questions for Megan, for Bayland, please don't hesitate to get in touch with the Stormwater Task Force or to email them to water@martinsadditions.org, and we will relay all of those messages, those questions to Megan.
And also, if you know of any neighbors that weren't able to come or have some issues, pass those along as well.
Right. Spread the word. The more of you that participate, the better job we'll do.
For sure.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you. And thank you, Megan. This was terrific.
Great.
Megan.